And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome the first speaker of the youth.
To describe something that can be tuned out. Something so constant that it fades into the background and becomes nothing more than just ambiance. When I first started writing a speech for YFS, I told myself I wasn't going to talk about mental health. I had a pretty good reason for it too. Over the past, 4 years, maybe more, I heard it talked about so much that it had become my white noise. But then I realized something. Mental health issues like anxiety, depression, stress aren't going away, and they're not going away for a reason. As young people growing up in the 21st century, more and more of us are experiencing challenges to our mental health, and not enough is being done to evaluate the causes and offer solutions. Today, I want to challenge some of the preconceptions that you might have about mental health and about my generation, Generation Z. I'm not going to blame social media, or the media at all. No. I want to focus on something that almost every teenager deals with on a daily basis. For me, the problem is school. School is one of the biggest stressors in our lives, so why don't schools have a better program to help with our mental health? Do me a favor. If you're a high school student, please raise your hand if school is one of, if not the biggest stressor in your life. I'm not surprised. There are 100 different school-related things that cause stress every day that are overlooked in favor of placing the blame on social media or friendship conflicts. I want to take some time today to highlight a couple of the things that cause us stress every day in school and outline some simple yet effective solutions. Free time is a huge part of being a teenager. Going out with friends, coming home late, finally getting some freedom away from your parents is all a vital part of growing up. Most teens value their free time and look forward to school getting released so that they can go out and do what they want. But I would argue that too often, school continues outside of its normal hours. Homework is still being given out, and it's not very useful. In my personal opinion, the more homework a teacher gives out, the less likely us as students are to like them. Why would we enjoy a class that gives us work every time we walk through the door? Surveys show that some students in high school are doing up to or over 3 hours of homework a night. That's not healthy. Our school day here at ISOL ends at 4. So even if we teleported back to home, we wouldn't be finished until 7. That doesn't leave us much time to do anything but eat dinner, text friends, go to bed. That means that over a 5-day period of intense learning, teenagers get little to no time to wind down by seeing people that they have strong connections with. But Eva, they can see it in school, you might say. But it's hard for me to get food with my friends and talk about all the gossip while we're in math class doing geometry. I'm not saying that everyone has 3 hours of homework. In fact, most people don't. I certainly don't. But what I am saying is this. Teenagers need their time. They need time to rewind and process. Once classes are done, they don't need to be doing more work. In fact, most homework can be classified as busy work. A sheet of math problems doesn't help us. Neither does a sheet of Punnett squares. And when it comes to assessments, most of us take time into our own hands. We don't need small deadlines or more worksheets to spur us on. I keep hearing teachers talk about how we have to reinforce the learning at home, but chances are the materials are even covered in class. And in the off chance that there's a test coming up, a study guide will be a lot more effective for students. It allows them to take their learning into their own hands, not feel forced to give up free time or pressure to finish the busy work that they've been given. It also allows them to fine-tune the assessments that they're going to get graded. On a similar note, grades are a huge part of school and student life. We get grades for every subject through a series of tests and assessments. A few numbers on a small sheet of paper define us and our successes. But that's not a standard set by students. In fact, it's usually those set by parents and teachers. I'm here to challenge your idea of what we should actually be defined by. An assessment shouldn't show our success in the class. Instead, our effort, our interest, and our willingness to learn should be the #1 priority. Schools like this one cost tens of thousands of dollars every year. So in our parents' eyes, it's seen as an excuse for us to get fantastic grades. I pay so much money for the school, you need to make it worth it. But that's not really fair. I mean, we work so hard already. Why do we need to only get fantastic grades for our parents to be worth their money? Why does it circulate around the non-academic learning we have? The experiential learning that we encounter is, in a way, far more valuable than a textbook with a few pages about how to hit the rose of power. The people we meet, the extracurricular experiences that we enroll in, are honestly just as important as those that we face in the classroom. There's a really clear pattern that happens, the structure that our parents and teachers see. The more money you pay for a school, the better the school will be. The better that school, the better your chances are of getting into a good university. The better your university, the better your job, and the better your job, the more money you're going to earn. It's kind of simple when it's laid out like that, but let's be honest, that's not how it should work. It's a cycle based off of this whole thing of social status and wealth. Why can't we do what we want to do and focus on the present? We don't always have to look forward for opportunities. Sometimes they can be right in front of us. How many hours of sleep do you get in a night? 8? 9? Even 10? Chances are, if you're a student like me, you'll have answered about 6 to 7. That's not healthy at all. In fact, that's really detrimental to your health, both mental and physical. Study after study has shown that teenagers need to be getting between 9 to 10 hours of sleep for a number of reasons, mostly because our mind and our bodies are still growing. I once fell asleep in the middle of a German test because I was running on an ungodly 5 hours of sleep. Not fun, nor healthy. Most kids don't get enough sleep because their sleep cycle is shifted. Our school day starts at 8:45 and we end at 4. Okay, fine. But why can't we start at 10? Even 10:45? This would allow the school day to end at 5 or 6. Not too different for students who have clubs or sports. And it would still allow adequate time for us to do what we wanted with friends once the school day has ended. Why can't we have a school day built around longer breaks and a better balance between wellness and well-being? After all, if young people continue to experience such high levels of stress, it's not going to be good for society in the long run. A mentally unhealthy population does not equal a happy and productive society. Ultimately, schools need to be aware of the impact that they have on students' mental health and need to work with them to make sure that they're functioning. The point of school is to make sure that students learn and thrive, but how can they do that if sometimes school is what's hurting them? Counselors, teachers, principals. I don't want this to be just another talk from a student with anxiety. We need your support. Keep your doors open and know that your students' mental health is just their health, and it needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva, for that truly illuminating talk. Next, we'll be hearing from a student at the International School of Luxembourg, a great supporter of our event. Please give Johanna Lippet from ISL a warm welcome on stage for her talk titled, Judge at Your Own Expense.
My name is Johanna, and I'm very scared right now. I'm standing in front of the wall while my home on the other side of the planet is burning down. As you probably heard from the title, I was supposed to come here and talk about something very different. But in light of recent events, I think this is a lot more important. I'm Australian, and right now that statement seems to draw a lot of how are you and is your family safe? Well, I'm not okay. I'm furious and devastated. How would you feel if your favorite place on earth was burning to the ground, and there was nothing you could do about it? Australia is not a unique case. All over the planet, climate change-induced natural disasters are raging away, but still we refuse to take that crucial sharp turn off the path that is leading to our own destruction. According to 2018's IPCC reports, we must reach peak carbon dioxide emissions this year if we want to have any chance at reversing this epic catastrophe we brought upon ourselves. There is no time to hope for the best. We are quite literally on the verge of collapse. But according to some people, we need to focus on the more important stuff right now, like school, for example. Do you really think I'm going to care whether or not I learned how to do calculus in 12 years when I won't be able to breathe properly anymore? I don't think so. Two friends and I, who are sitting in the audience right now, tried to set up a fundraiser for the Australian bushfires at our school. And we made it into an educational thing as well, so we could raise awareness and educate students about what's happening. But it took a lot of frustration and effort to get it approved. Now, I'm not here to talk badly about my school, since they're kind of the reason I'm standing here, and I'm sure they had their reasons. But I do want to talk about this common issue of hypocrisy among many people on this planet. The mindset of many is that if it's not happening to me, why is it my problem? Let me tell you why it's your problem. See, when something burns, most commonly carbon dioxide is released. In this case, since a portion of a nation is on fire, you can imagine how much CO2 is being released into the atmosphere. Methane is also being released in considerable quantities, which is even worse for the planet. As of last week, 400 million metric tons of CO2 have been released from the fires. That is more than half Australia's annual carbon emissions. If we're supposed to reach peak emissions this year and then go down from there, these ongoing fires need to be stopped now. Another common argument is that Australia is already a wealthy developed country, so why should they need our help? The economic cost of the fires is set to exceed $4.5 billion, and the recovery is estimated to cost $100 billion. Imagine if everyone who could just pitched in a little bit. Think how much that would help. But people just want to hold on to their money because we're all greedy, right? We see a child cry, and we immediately rush to help them because that's the right thing to do. But when a country is literally on fire, there's way too much of, no, they don't need my help. They can help themselves. If that child was really big and had money in its pocket, would you walk away from them too? Let's go back to the issue of shut up and get back to work. There are so many teams in the world who are trying to help save the planet, but they are being told to shut up and get back to work. See, my generation is at a unique advantage in that we will be around when the true devastation of climate change hits. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say advantage? What I meant is that if we don't do something about climate change fast, we will be dying of climate change instead of obesity or heart attacks. We will see a rise in sea levels, coral bleaching, ice-free summers in the Arctic, severe heat waves, flooding, and the loss of wildlife, to name a few. That's if nothing changes. If nothing changes, then having kids for us will be putting them on a planet that won't be worth living in anymore. If nothing changes, then getting a university education at this point is kind of irrelevant. If nothing changes, well, I don't want to live in that world. The problem is that none of us want to live in that world. But the people making the big decisions have the luxury of knowing that they won't have to live in that world. Whereas us, the young people who will have to face this reality, are being silenced. We are told to be global participants, be passionate about causes outside of school, be world leaders. But as soon as we try to do just that, it's all, no, you need to focus on your education. So then, we become complacent and depressed because our future is being taken away from us, and there doesn't seem to be anything we can do about it. And then do you know what they say? You guessed it. They say, go save the planet if you're so concerned with your future. Thanks. If I sound angry, it's because I am. My generation is angry. Our future is being taken away from us. This isn't our fault, but it's our reality. To quote Greta Thunberg, how dare you? People need to realize that we don't live in a bubble. Sure, Australia is on the other side of the planet, but the whole world is still going to feel the consequences. I mean, Australia isn't the only country causing climate change. They are still the ones on fire. While there's people sitting in the corporate office of some carbon dumping company saying, there's nothing I can do about it. The other day, I heard someone complaining about the fact that their parents wouldn't let them get this 2,000-euro Louis Vuitton belt. Are you kidding me? My country is on fire. To put the whole situation into perspective a little, I'm going to tell you some facts. We're in Switzerland, which is about 41,000 kilometers squared. There is currently 100,000 kilometers squared of land burning in Australia. That's 46% more land than the 2019 Amazon fires. Switzerland would have to completely burn 2.5 times over to match the equivalent. I live in Luxembourg, and Luxembourg would have to burn 40 times over. 40 times. Here are some more numbers for you. Around the new year, it was estimated that some 480 million animals had died in fires. That number rose to over 1 billion 5 days ago. That is the same as the population of China or India. 111 times the population of Switzerland. 1 billion animals. Don't you think that if a billion innocent people were being burned alive by no fault of their own and didn't even know what was happening, that people would rush to give away the change at the bottom of their wallets? If that's not enough insanity for you, I don't know what to tell you. The bottom line is that this needs to be stopped now. Australia is not a unique case. If we don't do anything about climate change, events like this are just going to keep coming up. I'm begging you to do something. Let young people fight for this earth. Don't deny them a future. Let us rise from the ashes of our ancestors' mistakes and make the change we so desperately need. It's not enough to just use a metal straw anymore. It's not enough to just not buy palm oil anymore. It's not enough to just pray anymore. The only people that can save us are the kids being kept behind the curtains. We need action now. Please help me save my home.
What an amazing talk. Please join me in thanking Johanna one more time. Our next guest is an award-winning speaker, scholar, and author who is recognized as one of the most influential experts in global education. It is truly a privilege to have him here at YFS with us. Please help me welcome Zhao to deliver his thoughts on why we don't need to wait for the future of education.
Thank you very much. It's sort of hard to follow young people, right? The only thing that makes me feel uncomfortable with this one is the youth word, the youth forum. I feel not part of the youth anymore. But I was also given a very hard topic to talk about. Why should we change education, create the future of education now? Because that's a very dangerous topic in a school. Because every teacher, every school think they're doing the right education for children. If I say anything bad and I to say it anyway to say why education doesn't work anymore for all of us. Actually, for anybody, it's working. And the image put up there is just one example of why education, as it is, has stopped working. That's the income development in the U.S. Actually, this mimics in many countries, which we call the rising inequity in education, the inequality, the disappearance of the middle class. So I apologize to all the young people here. Adults like us have left you a mess. You see all the mental health issues you heard just now, the fires, and a really bad education system that no longer works. And why do we have this income gap? Why do we have this disappearing middle class? It's very simple. When we develop any new technology, and the technology is often created and often benefits a very few people on the top. The people who are the inventors, the creators. And then unless we can educate the masses to take advantage of the new technologies, the prosperity will not be equally distributed. Because all new technologies comes in, disrupts the existing market. And all technology are invented to displace existing jobs. So that's the problem. So education, as it was preparing people from old economy, but then it didn't happen, and that economy just stopped. I don't know if you know this, the Saudi Arabia oil minister once said something really nice. He said, you know, the Stone Age did not end because they ran out of stones. Things just happen because we have new technology coming out. So if you look at what happened there is that education technology always runs a race. When technology pulls ahead, it redefines what jobs, what talent, what knowledge, what skills we need. And over the last 200 years, we've seen the decline of agriculture, of farming, of natural resource extraction, then replaced with the industrial age education that we call workers. That's today's education was invented as such. And then around 1970s, so we have the first industrial revolution, the second one had the steam engine, electricity, the third one is really automation, computers, that's all around 1970s. So that technology displaced a lot of workers from assembly lines, construction, automaking, a lot of them. And that's why in the US and in other places, the middle class disappeared, rising income inequality. Then as a result, we have a very messy world today. You see the political division, social integration, rising nationalism, rising xenophobia. I mean, there's all of this political problems today that's happening. We have Brexit, we have the crazy Americans doing crazy American things, and you have I have to tell you we are entering a really poor time because economics affects the social fabric, affects cultures. And so now, as you can see, we have more automation, we have more smart machines. What kind of education we need? And this is, you can see the people now. The next generation we need is the rising, we call the decline of the working class, the decline of employees, the rise of the creative class. But how are we doing in education creativity? Today everybody's talking about, let's get our children to be creative. Let's try to teach them to be creative. In my mind, actually, research will say this. We are born creative. In many ways, creativity cannot be taught, but it can be killed. Education is a very powerful tool to kill creativity. So if I were a child, I would go to school. Don't teach me creativity, just try not to kill my creativity. And this is how it works. If you look at age 5, 98% of our children are creative at the genius level. and the genius, 98%. The other two are the more than genius, I guess. So 98%. Now think about this. After 5 years in our schools, of course not yours, not this, in other people's schools. But after 5 years in other people's schools, we lose 60% of them. Only 32% are left. Another 5 years, we got 10% left. And you go out about midlife, about 40, age 40, we got 2% left at the genius level. So schools have been the most powerful, most effective creativity killing machines. Why is that? So education, as schools were built today, were built to take creativity out of people so they can work nicely on assembly lines. On assembly lines, we don't need any creative people. Most jobs, we don't need them. I said, Lady Gaga is useless for Henry Ford. Think about that, right? So schools have to do that. And how do schools do that? We create a nice framework we call curriculum. We create a nice pathway. Every child has to learn this and this and this and this so you can find a job. That's a lie, I'm sorry. Because most jobs are not going to be there waiting for you. Whatever curriculum you're trying to, you think you're getting, I mean, I'm from universities. I know universities are not preparing people for the jobs because there will be no jobs, okay? So once we create that curriculum, we make sure every child masters the nitty-gritty piece of knowledge. We waste your time, I'm sorry, to memorize this useless information which you can easily find anywhere, and then you feel good about it. That's why analysis will torture you into this model. Do more homework, do hard work, where you can be creating much more interesting things that is useful. Okay, so then when we do that, then we tell you how bad you are, we give you exams. We tell you that we define your identity by a bad score, right? You get a C. Well, I'm a C student now. What am I going to do? I'm going to try to be a B student. How do you do that? I waste more time so I can learn to be a B student. That's how we do it. We make sure that you live a miserable life in school so you can go outside and find anything is better than school. That's how we prepare for the workplace. Okay, that's how we do it. That's serious how we do it. Okay, so what do we need to think about? What do we need to change now? If we do not change, we will see more and more social inequity. We'll see a lot more mismatch of what the world needs and what our talents are. We'll see big, big problems. It's not only a problem of individuals, it's a problem of the society. And because what's coming up is more dangerous. If you look at statistics on how artificial intelligence is going to affect the kind of jobs we have, the higher degree jobs is going to be more affected by artificial intelligence than lower degrees, bachelor's degrees. And does this mean you should never go to college? No. It basically means we need a different kind of college. What we need is not only more education, it's a different kind of education. And that kind of education is we should always start with the child, and not start with the curriculum. We start what the child can be, what the child has, and help the child become he or she could be. Not try to serve some silly curriculum that's prescribed for you. Okay? No curriculum is sufficient to help our children to lead a successful life in the future. No curriculum today I've seen, or no school I've seen today, has actually completely changed the paradigm of education that make it a school of one, that will serve every child so they can become who they can be, so they can become someone will create value for others, so they can become creative, and creativity itself is a thriving and enjoyable experience. So now we need to change the education today. As Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, said, Artificial intelligence is not actually dangerous. The most dangerous like this is we should not be afraid of machines. We should be very afraid of making human beings into machines. Thank you.
Thank you to Yong for that fascinating talk. Now we will be having a short break, followed by a panel moderated by Bernadette Lippet on the power of youth. Please remain seated and consider sharing some thoughts, questions, or observations using the hashtag on the screen above me. Thank you.
Right into the What?
Promo is ready? Okay. Ross.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school, on the other side of the ocean. Yet, you all come to us young people for hope.
As a character to my teenage optimism, theories can be shared, and you don't have to be a professor with multiple degrees to have your ideas down. You can be changing the world.
Then it's time for victims to be the change that we need to see. Companies trying to make caricatures of the teenagers nowadays, saying that all we are is self-involved and friendlessness and they must us into submission when our message doesn't reach the ears of the nation. We won't be asked.
From Fridays for Future to March for Our Lives, we are seeing an increasing amount of global events organized by young adults. In a world facing political, social, and environmental turmoil, the youth are rising up and taking action. This new wave activist movement sparks questions such as, should the youth be involved in politics, and are they lacking representation in today's major discussions? We are living in a world where this new generation is not letting its future be decided by those above. But are the other generations keeping up with this new surge of activism? And despite all the traction youth-created movements have received, are they being taken seriously by the people in charge? This panel will investigate the role teenagers and young adults are playing in today's society, as well as the barriers they are facing. My name is Dee, and I'm a grade 12 student here at the International School of the CERN. And today I'll be moderating today's discussion on the power of youth. Before we begin today's session, I'd like to let you know how the session will run. We'll only have approximately 40 minutes together, 20 of which will be spent with a discussion, and then around 15 will be the Q&A session, and in between there'll be a short break for you guys to generate some questions. I'd now like to introduce today's speakers. To my left, I have Craig Frankfort, who works as a consultant specializing in youth empowerment. He also works in the state showing underserviced and marginalized communities. Craig is a World Economic Forum Global Chamber. To his left, we have Naomi Walter, who is a student and activist and focuses on raising the voice of young girls of color, as well as discussing the disproportionate rates of violence against them. To her left, we have Dionysus Papapanagiotou, an 11th grade student at ISL who participated in a trip to Lesbos to help a refugee camp. To his left, we have Sai Govinder, who works for the Youth Employment Service, a business-driven collaboration supported by the South African government. Sai is also a World Economic Forum Global Chamber. And last but not least, we have Carolina Eklund, who works at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute and is the vice curator of the Global Chamber Stockholm Hub. Please join me in welcoming today's speakers. Now, you're all examples of youth who have achieved a lot in their respective fields. So I was wondering if you could go down the line and if you could all please give us a brief description of the recent projects you've been working on. If we could start with Craig.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So with the Global Shapers Victoria Hub in the Seychelles, we've been doing a lot of really important work around equity and inclusion, and over the next year we'll be doing some really important work with climate action. So for us, equity and inclusion is really important. We want to see different types of people, a diverse range of people taking part in activism. You can sometimes find that it can be an echo chamber if you have similar sorts of people taking part in activism. So we want to try and diversify that space. And in terms of climate action, the work that we're doing at the moment, we want to foster the next generation of environmental activists. And for us, that is all about equipping young people with agency. Young people have a passion, but we need to give them the agency to take action. So for us, in the Global Shapers Victoria Hub, that's what we're focusing on.
Naomi?
Hi, I'm Naomi. I'm from Washington, D.C. And one of the things that I do primarily with my work is raising awareness and having conversations in the first place. And so helping people get started when they want to support a cause that they're passionate about. For me, that's Black women and girls and how they're often forgotten in all the global conversations that we're having, how they're affected by gun violence, domestic violence, don't get nearly as much attention as other people, and I feel like giving speeches and participating on panels is really is really what I do, so that I can be a part of the conversation and bring a view of the conversation that maybe not a lot of people are talking about.
Thank you. Yong?
Hi everyone. Last September, with a few of my classmates and myself, we went to Lesbos, Greece, and we supported the refugee crisis. We helped with the refugee crisis that's going on, and we worked with Cause We Carry, an NGO, working on the ground with the refugees in Lesbos.
Hi everyone, I'm Sai from South Africa. So one of the biggest challenges that we are facing at present is youth unemployment. So we have close to 7 million youths that are currently unemployed, and out of a total population of 54 million, that's quite significant. So as a youth employment service, we help youth to get 12 months work experience with the aim of getting them into permanent employment thereafter.
Hi, as my job, I have been involved in the intimate part of getting climate onto the UN Security Council's agenda. But as a global shaper in Stockholm Hub, we are running, for example, a project on how to drive the change from within companies instead of opposing companies from the outside, and leveraging the age and the generation that we are in so that we can actually be the change makers inside the institutions.
And now, there's been a lot of youth movements recently, and we have people who are creating youth movements. Do you think there's been a catalyst to today's generation rising up against the prior generations? I mean, Craig, if you want to start us off again.
I don't know if, I wouldn't say that there's more. I think young people are probably more visible now for various reasons. I think the obvious factor these days is social media. We see so many youth activism causes on social media through various platforms. So I think the visibility is there. But I think actually in terms of youth activism, perhaps all the people in the audience can attest to this, I think it's always been there. So I don't think it's new.
I'd like to open it up to the panel if anyone has anything else to comment on that.
Yeah, like social media, it's played a big role as it's easier access for everyone to use. And as we see in Hong Kong right now, Telegram and WhatsApp is a way for the protesters to gather support for their cause.
And speaking of social media, do you think social media has been a hindrance or just help? Do you think there's some aspects of social media that are holding movements back today, or do you think they're really beneficial? Caroline, if you want to start us off.
Sure. Yes, I think that social media and the risk of going viral also can be an issue for some movements.
Anyone else have anything to say?
I think that social media can be harmful when it comes to mental health and self-image, but I feel like it can be really beneficial, like you said, when it comes to raising awareness. And if you post something, you have access to millions of people. And so it's not like you're just having one conversation with somebody, but everybody in the world has access to it. And so it's really, I think it's a really good concept, and you should be able to like connect with people on a level that's not very personal, but you can still contact them.
And Naomi, I'd like to aim this question at you've seen social media raise girls like Greta Thunberg and Emma Gonzalez, but they've also received a lot of criticism from politicians. How has being a youth activist affected you in your work in that sense?
So I think that being 13 and 12 and 11 when I was starting, I feel like that in general gives people a reason to not trust me. And so, I mean, I get it too, because I'm 13. I don't know what I'm talking about, or I should be in school, I should be writing an essay, I should be doing my homework. But I feel like a big part of activism is learning to take care of yourself and not just trying to save the world. So I don't need to focus on what other people are saying about me, and I don't think anybody should focus on what other people are saying about them, but as long as they know that what they're saying is the truth, they should continue to say.
Thank you, that was really, really insightful.
So one of the biggest challenges I guess we see is education. So in South Africa, 56% of the matrics that leave each year do not have a matric, which is quite shocking. So this is one of the major causes of the high unemployment levels. So the work that I do is we try to bridge this gap and get as much disadvantaged youth to be able to be put on the same playing field so that they can access employment opportunities.
Thank you. And Carolina, you're almost on the, I don't want to say the opposite end of the spectrum, but living in Sweden, you probably have a completely different picture to this side. Do you think there's still barriers in Sweden to youth or in Europe in general?
Well, at least they're different in Sweden from how they seem to look at the moment in other countries. We have a very long history and culture of organizing ourselves, and the civil society is very strong. So through those channels, if you know how to use them, you can get your movement through other channels than necessarily as we consider activists. So I'll leave it at that.
And I'd like to go back to Dion because you went to Lesbos and you helped refugees, and you're also from Greece. How would you say the political situation in your country has affected youth?
Well, a huge barrier in Greece is how political universities are. The moment that students join the universities, political parties try to recruit the students. And you have students who are trying to find themselves, who are trying to understand the world, and you have political parties who are trying to recruit them straight away, filling their minds with a bunch of stuff that they might not agree with, but you know, they're pressuring them, and that's a very Greece.
Now, we don't have much time left, I'm afraid, so to close this off, I'd like to aim this at Greg, but then I'd like to open it up to the panel as well. Why do you think the youth are being discounted because of our age?
It's silly, isn't it? I mean, to me, if you're passionate about an issue, and if you can convey your passion on that issue, then to me, I'm convinced. And if that issue is a truth to you as well, if you can speak with some degree of authenticity on that issue, if you take what Naomi is talking about, for example, or even if you look at climate action causes, that's a reality for a lot of people. So to dismiss a young person's view on climate action just because they're not old enough, but actually it's more their reality. I mean, older generations will die. I mean, we're all dying. Older generations will die soon, right? Young people will have to live with this reality. So I don't understand myself how we can discredit young people when they're very authentic on some of the topics that they're talking about. So I think young people's voices are often discredited. I think it's an easy thing to do. I think it's easy to say young people should be seen and not heard. But I think more and more in this day and age, that doesn't apply anymore. The rules have changed.
Does anyone have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So as Zhao was great said, experience is important in certain instances, but I believe that you don't have to have experience to add value for a cause you believe in. It should be your passion and purpose that matters.
And we actually have a bit more time than I thought, so I'd like to go down the line now and ask. So, growing up, what motivated you to do all that? Like, did you have a hero or someone you looked up to? What made you want to do what you do today, like the projects you're participating in? So I guess, Craig, if you want to start off, and then we'll go to that.
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, I've always been very conscious of the world that I live in and the people around me. And one issue that is very close to my heart is equity. So, as I was saying earlier on, there are a lot of people who perhaps have a little bit more agency to enact change on the issues that they care about. What about those who lack that agency? What if you're from a marginalized background, for example? So what are the skills gaps? What are the knowledge gaps? What are the network gaps, the confidence gaps that we need to bridge in order to give those people the opportunity to take action on the causes that they care about? So I wouldn't say for me it was a person as such that inspired me, but just looking at people who to me are passionate, that lack agency, giving them that agency or helping them with their journey to find that agency is really important. Because ultimately on any issue, diversity and having different voices at the table.
Naomi?
As a person of color, it's not really an option to grow up and not face what's going on in constantly treated like you're less than and seen differently, and it's just something you have to deal with. It's your life, and so I don't think it's an option like so many people who aren't of color to live their lives and never have to face the reality of racism and xenophobia because they live in a world where they have the upper hand and they don't have to worry about stuff like that. And so I feel like it's not so much a person, but the color of my skin and my gender and my religion. I feel like there are so many things that make me different, so many things that make all people different, and so it's really about your identity that forces you to come out of your shell. So if you are a part of the majority or you don't really have anything to hold you back, you're not going to have to face the reality or many barriers earlier.
Yong?
Walking down the streets in Greece and just like seeing people my age, my brother's age, and even older people, it's just like I could have been in that situation, but I'm here right now. But there are people in Greece on the streets right now who have made a dream to come to Greece, risk their whole lives, and just like how unfair that is, you know. That is one, and second is a person who came on the trip with me, who is in the room right now, who helped me a lot during that trip. So yeah, those two things.
Thank you. Sai?
So I've always looked up to my parents. So they grew up during the midst of apartheid in South Africa and faced many challenges when it came to education. So that is why I advocate for quality education for all, no matter where you come from or what your background is. I believe everyone deserves the right to quality education.
As a teenager or as a youth, so to say, I wouldn't say that I was very active. I grew up in a small city in Sweden where we didn't care about much other things than gossip. So, touching upon what Naomi said about living in a bubble and not really connecting to the reality outside, that's a description of the place where I grew up. However, I was obviously always curious, and as you said, Yong, it's you connect to people that you meet throughout your life, and you realize that this could be me. And when you open up the horizons, you travel, you connect to people, and you just in my case, it was a game changer to live in China and just see how the environment was so, like I'm talking about the physical environment right now, as I do this before, but it was so controlled by the state. So I realized that it's humans behind all these actions, and that means that we are in control of the society, and that just triggered so much. Such a passion to actually be part of change, whether it's local or global, but I want to be part of it.
Thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts today. That's all we have for the discussion, but we are going to be having a Q&A. So for the Q&A, you'll have 2 minutes to generate some questions. You can either post on Twitter using the hashtag that's projected above me, or you can hold on to them as we'll have roaming mics going around the room.
I mean,
Say your
it won't
name,
drain the
who your
battery.
question is aimed at, or if it's with the panel, so stay with the panel, and then ask your question. So do we have any questions from the audience? Oh, Joa front has a question.
Hi, my name is Zhao, and my question is for Naomi. So we were just wondering how you initially put yourself out there and what advice you would give to those of us who are passionate about certain things but don't really know how to advocate for them.
So the first thing that I did was, for my activism was 2 years ago. I held a walkout at my school, and it was 17 minutes for the 17 victims of the Parkland shooting in Florida, but then we added an extra minute for Portland Arrington, an African-American girl who was shot and killed in her school in Alabama, and she wasn't getting any media attention. And quite honestly, I had no idea what I was supposed to do, or how to act, or even what I was advocating for it and fully understand. But I think that if you want to get started, it's really important to ask yourself what you think is important and what you think is important to do for yourself and for the world. And I say a lot that success looks like you. And so you should look to others for your definition of success. And you should try to do what other people are doing and advocate for whatever issues are on the news. But really do whatever you think is going to be impactful. So if you think that putting up posters in your school is going to make a difference, you should do that. If you think that giving speeches, moderating panels, doing anything that you think is going to be right, I mean, that is what makes a difference. Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Oh, in the back there? This side afterwards. Lucas.
Hi, my question is for Leon and Naomi. You both are incredibly passionate about the respective issues that you're fighting for, and it's quite apparent when you're talking that this passion is really quite strong. How do you control the anger that you might feel in these issues that are towards the supposed perpetrators? How do you channel that anger into something that's productive?
I was lucky enough to go on the Legends trip with a few of my classmates who are here today as well, and Mr. McGowan. And when I do feel angry or I want someone to talk to, I go to them and I talk to them. Or I also have music, like I write lyrics, and that also helps me express myself.
A big part of the way you speak affects how your message gets across. So if, for example, sometimes I feel really angry and I might want to raise my voice during my speech or yell at somebody because they don't have the same opinion as me. But what's really important is to contain yourself and to channel all of that into productivity, like you said. And so instead of raising my voice and getting angry, I can talk more and I can try to illustrate my point. I can write an op-ed or an article about something and pour all of my emotions into that. And so I feel like if you're yelling or you're angry or you appear to be upset, they're not really going to be listening to what you're saying. And so a big part of what you do is how you present yourself. And so even though it's not fair, but since we are young, people are going to look at you differently. And so even though you might be angry, I still don't do this sometimes, but self-control is really important.
And now what are questions from Ben Ashton about the voting age? So voting age is something that's been talked about quite a lot recently. Do you think it should be lowered? What are the risks associated with benefits associated with doing that? Carolina, if you want to start us off.
The voting age in Sweden is 18, and I think it would make sense to lower it 1 or 2 years.
Do you think there's any risks associated with doing that?
Yes, but I think that opportunities outweigh the risks.
Does anyone else have anything else to add?
I think that if we do lower the voting age, then students 16 years old, 17 years old, will have one more way to voice their opinion, their changes that they want to fight for, and maybe one day, unite together and fight for that change together.
If we do lower the voting age, we should give students access to resources that will educate them, because we don't want a bunch of 15, 16, 17-year-olds who know nothing about politics casting a ballot because that's what their parents says or that's what they see on the news. So if we're going to lower the age, we should make a bigger effort to educate our youth.
And just to add, so I think since the youth are the future custodians of the world, they should have a say who is put into positions of power.
Now we'll take a question from the audience on this side, maybe, because I'm on this side already. You in the purple shirt.
Thanks. My name is Allegra, and this question is just for the panel. So what kind of challenges did you need to face to be up here today?
Do you want to start us off?
When we applied to visit Lesbos to go to the organization we went to because of Carrie, we faced some difficulties of going there because the organization itself did not allow students 18 years old and lower to help but go there. So that was a difficulty that the team faced, but eventually we went there and we gained their trust, and we're going there in the summer and also in September.
Okay. And we have time for another question. So yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Ivan. First of all, congratulations to the organizers. I'm really, really pleased to be here. I think this is a topic well worth exploring. Question for everyone really is, I'm part of a generation, like many generations before me, that has been taught to disconnect from other people. So it's very, very easy for me to disregard everything that's being said. Right? And I think that we all share that same thing. It's not just my generation, generations before me as well. Say, oh, she's from Australia. Oh, she's too young. Oh, he's from South Africa. This doesn't really concern me. Or I might feel temporarily touched by what they say. And then I'm too busy. I have a life to lead, and I'll go back into my own thing. And I think that's something that many of us can sort of like relate to. So I suppose the question is, and I think the good part, my formal education has actually taught me to disconnect, taught me not to feel part of the group. So I suppose my question is, do you guys see a way of changing education so that involves, or so that it puts forward ways of connecting on not just a rational but an emotional level to other people? Thank you.
I think the diversity in school is really important, and not only in the student body that goes there, but in the curriculum. And so the people, the historical figures that they're talking about, if you only learn about white historical figures, you're not going to be exposed to any other people. And the things that you are exposed to affects how accepting you are when you're older. So if you're only ever exposed to white people, and to white scientists, and white politicians, and when you go out and you see a black person, maybe you're not gonna be as understanding or as willing to have a conversation. And so I feel like if we're exposed at a younger age to things that aren't us, and things that are different points of views, we're going to grow up and we're going to be able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and try to understand and have a willingness to learn about other people's culture. Because, my mom got me a book full of African American scientists, and so many of them took part in building, inventing the computer, inventing the light bulb, but of course we never heard about them. And so I feel like what would we be like as a society if we weren't just taught about the people at the forefront and the people who were the last step to getting something done, because there are so many other people behind the movement. And so I feel like with education, the way that we're educated and the things that we're exposed to plays a big part in the way we deal with things in the world.
I agree with that, and I think it's as much about the informal education system as much as the formal education system. And I think at the heart of what we're saying essentially is tolerance and empathy, right? Walking a mile in someone else's shoes. So, you know, we can learn about different types of people through the formal curriculum, but then how are we embedding empathy and understanding and tolerance of others informally in school settings? If you come from a certain background and perhaps the demographic is a certain type, how are you exposing your student body to different demographics so that they understand the forms of life? So the curriculum and how that provides is important, yes, but I do think there are things in everyday education informally that we can think about.
I'd like to second that. I think that it's important to not only assume that formal education is responsible for teachers, and there's also such a pressure on the education system, and there's all these expectations that the schools are going to consume all the needs, and there's such a large diversity of other organizations and communities that can ensure that. That being said, I don't think that it's any less important. I just think that schools are doing such a great job in so many places already, so I just want to say that. And on your question, Allegra, on the challenge of getting here, I wanted to connect my answer to that, to this question from you, Ivan, that I came here with train from Sweden, so it took me a few days, and this morning there was this girl who, where I did a change in Frankfurt, and this girl came up to me that I had never met. It was pitch black, and she came up to me and needed my help because she had been harassed on the bus. And so I took care of her. And what I'm trying to say here is that by living our values, whether that's through climate action or through empathy, the bad news is that it's going to be difficult, but the good news is that it's going to be worth it.
Thank you. And now a question from Jojo for Sai. As digital education is more accessible to less developed countries, could you see this as a possible solution, or do you think it could negatively affect the mental and social state of the youth there?
Thanks for the question. So I think digital education is very important, especially in marginalized communities, just so that those youth are not left behind. Because that's one of the main reasons that we are in the state we are today, because a lot of those youth have been forgotten. So the work that I do is we try to actually get people comfortable with technologies. So one of the hub projects as a global shaper with the Johanna Hub is shaping tech. So what we try to do is create awareness around 4IR, but specifically from a young age. So we are working on developing a mobile makerspace where a mobile truck will go into communities and teach children what things like robotics are, AI, etc. So that they can be comfortable from a young age and be able to pursue stable fields later on.
Thank you. And I think we have time for just one last question from the audience. In the black shirt over there.
My question is, what is your ideal path for youth activism to take so we can reach the next step in achieving a sustainable, equal world where every person and issue has a place at the table? So what's like the next step after activism?
Does anyone particularly want to start that? If not, I'll point someone out.
I can kind of go. Okay, so activism comes in many shapes and forms, I suppose. I think a key thing that we must think about when it comes to activism is how we organize. So it's important to be passionate about the issue that you care about. Yes, that absolutely is at the crux of activism. But if you want to see impact, if you want outcomes based on what you are trying to change, you need to have a game plan, right? You need to have a strategy. You need to understand where the levers of power lie, who makes the decisions, who can you influence, who you need to influence to get the outcome that you're trying to go for. How do you get more people to support your cause? So all of these things are important. That is your strategy. So I think as part of activism, thinking about your strategy and how essentially you get a seat at the table is really important. I cannot underplay that enough. Thinking about your strategy is often where a lot of campaigns go wrong. Bigger campaigns, small campaigns, you just don't think about that outcome and what you have to tangibly do to get there. So think about what that strategy map looks like and who the key players are on the issue that you care about. And then you can start to see, okay, this politician, they care about folks. So how am I going to mobilize the community so that this politician listens to what we have to say? And that's the key thing for me with activism in campaign.
Live. We have one more question from Mark Buckley.
I have a question. It's probably going to be too long for each of you to answer, so maybe if we could have 2 or 3 answer and be as short as possible. So I'm going to give you an impossible task. What does a world that works for everyone look like for you? Or could you describe what a world that works for everyone looks like?
Does anyone want to take that?
I feel as if for me it's already been said between Naomi, myself, and probably Carolina as well, just walking a mile in everyone's shoes and understanding. I think a lot of the issues that we face in this day and age just comes from not really taking the time to understand where the other person is coming from. So I'm not going to say that's going to solve all the issues, but if we can just take a moment to understand that person's perspective and their walk of life and why their worldview is shaped a certain way, I think that's already a good thing.
Now, I'd like to ask Yong what he thinks on this.
Understanding, as you said, and just one word, but for me it's very powerful. Respect. Respecting one another. Respecting how, for example, the situation with the refugees, how they came to Greece, all the risks that they had to take to come here, and respect and understanding.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to answer?
So for me, I think it's a world free of injustices and free of inequalities.
Thank you. And thank you all for the questions. If you could join me in thanking our
Thank you for that fascinating discussion. Whilst we're on the topic of the power of youth, I would like to take this opportunity to share the exciting news that the International School of Zubin Lutzer plans to become carbon neutral by 2023. To achieve this, we're launching a new initiative to offset our carbon by planting trees in Iceland. ISL will be making 2 trips a year to Iceland, where students will plant birch and spruce trees to offset our carbon footprint. We call this project the ISL Forest. Over 4 years, we could offset more than 100,000 tons of carbon emissions, which is equal to the carbon produced by a car driving around the circumference of the Earth, 10,000 times. With this project, ISL could become one of the first schools in Switzerland to become carbon neutral. More information about this initiative will be announced tomorrow at the main event. Lastly, I would like to thank the Parents Association, the Fund for Excellence, and the Youth Forum team again for their efforts in bringing tonight's event to life. Let's give a massive round of applause to all of tonight's panelists and speakers for bringing their passion and their expertise with them tonight. Finally, I would like to thank you, the audience, for
topic tonight.